But you don't need that hanging over your head. You can't have a plan B. You've got to go all in for your own sake and for your wife's sake and for the future success of your business. You can't have a plan B. This is the Just Real Quick podcast, where we discuss how to succeed in the world of sales through confidence, discipline, and consistency. Are you ready to be intentional about creating more opportunities that lead to sales? Tune into this episode right now for the latest insights and strategies that will take your sales game to the next level. I'm your host, Jefferson K. Rogers. Welcome back to another episode of Just Real Quick. Jefferson Rogers checking in with you from our Northern Utah podcast studio, which also doubles as my office. And today I'm going to be interviewing a very special person within the JKR Windows organization, Mr. Brady Corliss. And he is all the way over in Tooele today. So we got him picking up from the front seat of his pickup truck virtually. Everybody welcome Mr. Brady Corliss. How's it going out there anyways, mister?
Good. I appreciate you having me on. Unfortunately, it's not a pickup truck. It's just a little Honda Civic, but we'll take it.
I figured you for a pickup truck guy.
I need to get one. That's a good excuse to get one. So
there you go. There you go. Well, I got a little Toyota Camry that I used to travel to, so I don't blame you for having a little run around car. But I appreciate you coming on today, man. I'm excited to get to interview and get to know you a little bit more, because I know we know each other and we've given each other a couple fist bumps and hugs, but never really got a chance to sit down and talk a lot. So I'm looking forward to this.
I'm excited as well.
So you've been in the door-to-door industry and around sales for a lot of years, and now with JKR Windows, but you didn't get your start in Windows. Where did you get your start in sales?
Yeah, so I was thinking about this earlier. It's probably a pretty common story, right? Started in customer service. My background's athletics, and so I played a little bit of college ball at BYU, and so naturally was really competitive. And I started out in customer service for a direct sales company, and naturally just being competitive, ended up doing really well as far as KPIs and metrics go. But the raise was just a capped raise every single time. Yeah. So I had actually gotten several different vertical opportunities with better title promotions. And I was like, man, this is so frustrating.
The money never really followed, did it?
It really didn't. Back then, at least, the HR department would cap it at 3%. And so, you making $18 an hour out of college, 3% is not much. And so, and you could only do that once a year as well. And so, started looking elsewhere. I had a lot of buddies from the baseball team go into software sales. And so that's where I actually got my start into sales. And so went there. They have a pretty similar model, which is a setter closer model. Theirs is sales development representative as well as account executive. And so started out as an SDR, same thing, right? Just like with my competitive background, my work ethic, ended up doing really well the first couple months, got promoted into like a team lead position.
Okay. So for those of us that don't know what an SDR is, what is an SDR?
Yeah, it's a sales development representative. So
okay. I've heard that twice today in the same day. I was like, what? This must be a common term. And I don't know what the heck it is.
Yeah. So it's a setter, and then a closer would be an account executive. And so I started as a setter there, ended up leading a team of like 8 to 9 reps, just depending on how churn was and promotions were. And so that was like a smaller vertical. Ended up going from that vertical into an inbound team and helping grow that team.
Great.
So, not as much outbound calls, more fielding inbound calls, working directly with marketing, setting up processes.
Which had a little bit of a pay difference too, I imagine.
Yep. So another bump there, right? And so that was awesome. And I had a really good mentor who was managing that whole team, and he's still a really close friend today. And the same thing, ended up getting to this point where I was essentially the top setter in the organization for a couple of quarters in a row. And I just had this promotion dangling over me the whole time, and I could never grab it for whatever reason. So left that company to a fast growing startup in the e-commerce space. Same thing, was doing sales, full sales cycle, from, prospecting all the way through point of investment and getting the customer onboarded.
So what was it that led you to sales from customer service? Was it all about the opportunity and the difference in the income that you could make?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I grew up in a direct sales family. My mom's built multiple like big downlines through like network marketing, right?
Okay.
And so naturally, I think just sales is in my blood. Like most of my family's in sales or some type of entrepreneurship, and so I knew it was going to be that eventually. I took probably more the safest route out of anyone in the family.
Yeah.
Working in corporate America initially, and then you're positioned to startups, which startups is awesome. And I did that for long story short, about 4 years, and went through various different companies from Series A. You're one of like 10 people in the office, getting it off the ground, building it from the ground up.
Yeah.
Which is fun and challenging in the same aspect, to a more established company like a Series D company where they've gone through a bunch of funding. They already have everything built in place, and you're essentially another cog in the wheel. And so, essentially, the last company I was with in the software space was that Series A company, and we were just building everything from the ground up. And so they had one vertical positioned really well, and my job was I was tasked out to build a full separate vertical. And so had a lot of fun doing that. You win and you learn a lot in the startup space.
Absolutely.
You have to be
forced to
quick on your feet, right? Yep. And so essentially COVID ended up happening, and there were some like political implications with that company, and it seemed like tech, any company that had over 100 employees was going to follow suit. And so I felt like I had to get out of the space. And so I started looking into 1099 options, where I wasn't necessarily controlled by an employer, if that makes sense. And so landed in the solar space, and been doing that last year prior to joining JKR.
So what was it about solar? Because I'm sure you looked at other opportunities. There's a lot of different 1099 opportunities out there, and roofing and solar and pest control and security systems, and even like, vacuums and water systems, and selling meat and seafood at door to door. But what was it about solar that led you there?
Yeah. There are a ton of opportunities. I think solar is one of like those, sexy things in the market, if you will, where it's a big product. It's a really unique product. Oftentimes, like, you're educating the customer on solar. The education's just not quite there in most markets. And then along with that, you have a big deal size with a relatively short sales cycle overall. And so that was one of the most fascinating things. And so how I got into that is I went on a couple blitzes in solar, ended up doing really well. And naturally, with my background, with my setting experience, I ended up leading a team of setters out there. So there's 24 guys. It was our first year in solar. And so same thing again, felt like I had to start from scratch and build the sales process up from the beginning. And so, I did that for about a year and a half, and actually really enjoyed solar. The problem that I ran into is, with most of these jobs, especially in solar in particular, is you can either move out to the area and live in market and just make it more of a lifestyle play, or you can do a blitz model where you're on for 10 days, off for 20. Yeah. And a lot of companies offer that, right? Unfortunately, solar in the state of Utah just doesn't make as much sense in most of the main utilities, in my opinion. And so I got to the point where, hey, do I want to actually move out to Arizona and commit to this full time? Do I see myself doing this long term? Which long term to me at the time was probably 5 years was going to be my runway.
Right.
And I'm a family guy. I have 2 kiddos. My oldest would be 8, 9 years old. Do I want to uproot him again and move back to Utah? Because that was the ultimate plan. Or do I want to do these blitz models where, you're working for 10 days, off for 20, and just with my family dynamic, I'd prefer to stay in market.
And you had toyed around with it. Had you gone and done a couple of those blitzes?
Yeah. So I how it all ended up playing out is I started as the regional sales manager there over that region. And so there was like 24 coordinators effectively, and then all in all about 35 reps. Mm-hmm. And, I ended up being quite a bit more than just the coordinator manager. I oversaw all operations on the back end, all CRM functions.
Wow.
Managed most of the pipeline for the team. And so I got promoted to do the regional manager role. Mm-hmm. is what I was supposed to go out there and do. And I was just in like this turmoil trying to weigh, like, do I want to uproot my family and move
Which
out
is
there?
right about the time that I met you.
Yep. And so I started looking into some other opportunities, and I don't remember how it was, Jeff. I think it was actually a Taylor McCarthy YouTube video, which Taylor McCarthy's a legend in the space in solar, and he came out and done a training for you guys. And so I think I started following you guys around that time, which was a while ago. And then I just kept hearing this thing about Windows, and I thought it was, to be frank, I was like, people are doing Windows door to door. Like, what can't you sell door to door? And the more I'd kind of dove into it, I realized it's actually pretty massive. You have a really unique opportunity to have a large deal size like you do in solar, except with Windows. And so you're looking at a $15,000 average deal size. Some of these deals get up to 40 grand, 50 grand.
Yeah.
And you're getting upfront pay. You're getting a quick turnaround time, and you guys do it all in-house. And so I was thinking back to my interview process with JKR, and I don't know if Jared ever told you this. You can probably realize that I'm pretty diligent in my approach.
Yeah.
I think I had like a 3-hour interview with him initially, and he probably felt more in the hot seat than I did. I was going back through my notes. I had like 20 questions I needed checked off before I would even consider it. And so shout out to Jared for being patient with me throughout that process.
Yep. I remember him give me a call after you guys had met, and he didn't tell me it was 3 hours, but he said, I just spent a little bit of time with this guy. His name's Brady. You're probably going to be hearing more about him. And he's really considering coming over from the solar industry. And I think I checked all the boxes for him. And there was just a lot of unanswered questions, a lot of uncertainty about what the window industry actually was. And I'm glad it was him you got to meet instead of, maybe one of these other guys that aren't as experienced, because he's the most tenured guy here at JKR Windows, knows the most. He's been my right-hand man for the past 3 years. And if it would have been anybody else, you may not be sitting here having a meeting with me on a podcast, being, an aspiring top director at JKR Windows.
Yeah, no, Jared was really impressive, his knowledge, experience. And I was asking a lot of detailed questions. I looked into even just like the total addressable market, the TAM of the market overall. I wanted to make sure this was something I could play long-term with. And so, there's a lot of homes that need new windows. He validated that upon all my research as well. And so, I asked him a lot of back-end operations. I made sure that, the company truly was doing an in-house install. I realized how important that was in solar. Mm-hmm. Because if you don't have an in-house installer, you have this disconnect. No matter what your sales pitch is, the back end operations has this disconnect, and it hurts you on the back end. It hurts you with referrals. You're now playing customer success more than you're actually selling, and so that's something I for sure needed checked off prior to making a commitment. So that was one of the biggest players on my
So
end.
with the solar model that you were in, they were essentially like a sales organization that then had a third-party installer come up, and they passed it off to them. And so that's when you started running into a lot of those customer service issues, because now it's out of your guys' hands. And as much as you want to try and promise and give these people expectations about what the process is going to look like, you had to essentially put it in somebody else's hands that is going to deliver on your promises.
Yeah. And it's tough, right? Because you're 3 to 4 steps removed from the actual installer. Mm-hmm. And so at the end, we ended up actually getting bought out by the installer. And so things were going to change, but you're working with one of the biggest installers in the country. And so you still feel like that little cog in a wheel. And so the nice thing with JKR is it's still small enough where it's a local family owned fill. And I know that that's how you guys want to keep it long-term as well, even as you scale. I can walk in Jason's office, who's our installer, and be like, dude, what's happening with this install? Or this customer needs to take help getting something taken care of. And just knowing Jason, he'll get it done tomorrow. So it gives me a ton of peace of mind. I sent out that text the other day on one of my first installs, and she's like, man, this is amazing. Your install crew was amazing. The windows are checking every box you said that they were going to check. And so it's just even further validation for me the longer I've been with the company.
Awesome. Well, that's what we were going for. It's, I had a background in Windows before I started my own, and I wanted to feel that same way. And there was a lot of things that were left undone, a lot of promises that never got met. And, all the talk was there, but the delivery wasn't there. Because, everybody wants to play a big game and they want to talk themselves up and make the customer feel comfortable. But then what ultimately separates the world-class companies are the companies that are then going to deliver on the promises. They do what they said they're going to do. They do it better than you expected that they were going to be able to do it. And when I started JKR Windows, that was a huge commitment because all I had ever known was this other way. And I knew that it didn't align with my morals and ethics. And as good as those guys are, they fell short in a couple of these areas that were very important to me and that I wasn't going to be able to make exceptions on and feel good about it. And, as much as I thought that it was going to take, like, people were going to nickel and dime us and it was going to be huge responsibility to do the service at that level, it really hasn't ended up being that bad because we set such high expectations with our salespeople, with our installers, with everybody that does service, that most of that stuff all gets handled on the front side anyway. So we get very little service work on the backside. And what very little we do, we go and take care of it and we do it promptly and we do it better than they expected. And because it's such a unique thing for us to do that, it's kind of surprising to people that we'll drive to Logan or to Vernal or to Price to go fix a screen. It's like it cost us way more to fix that screen than anybody was expecting us to be able to commit to. But that's what separates world-class companies and companies that people like you can feel comfortable with because they want something that they can go out there and be proud of. Yeah.
Yeah. And you think about it like in the solar space in particular, everyone's fighting for the lowest red line or the highest pay scale is what that is. And so people fight over that all the time. And same thing with Windows, right? Like I could have gone and got a better pay scale at a different company and I could have made more upfront money. But the reality is like I have very minimal customer support on the back end. I know the customers are getting taken care of. That's going to increase referrals, natural and organically. And so the upfront might not be per se the highest I could possibly ever get, but the back end is going to pay me tenfold. And so that's why it was important for me to check all those boxes. Like I'm looking at it more of a long-term view as opposed to just like, hey, what could I go do in the next 4 months? Which
is a very good point for the culture of a company and the type of people that we attract here. Because those solar dudes that are chasing red lines, I don't think they would fit in here. And I've talked to some of them and they're very selfish in the way that they talk and the way that they've been conditioned being a part of that type of culture. Which is okay, it's just that culture. It's just that the energy that's there. And I know some guys that are decent guys, and that's just what they've grown up in sales doing. And that's the only thing that they know. Yep. But the kind of culture that we want to have here at JKR Windows is less about how much can you do for me and more about the infrastructure, something to be proud of, a culture and environment that you can be proud of and excited to show up to every day that also just takes care of customers at such a level that it separates us. It really, truly separates us and gives us a unique value proposition because there's not very many other companies, period, no matter what industry that you want to think of, that are willing to go the lengths to make sure their customers are happy and we have a customer experience as good as we do here at JKR Windows.
Yeah. And you've talked a lot about just like the customer facing side of things, which is awesome. And at some point it also has to be rep facing as well. And so, like I said, part of the criteria is that as well. And so I looked at the tech stack. You guys have invested in a CRM being Salesforce. You invest in Xero. You invest in SalesRabbit. Like the tech stack's there for the rep as well to be able to learn. And so, I can't tell you how many hours I've spent on Xero listening to the top reps. That's essentially game film to cut the learning time for down in half, and so
absolutely.
That was something most of these other window companies didn't even have a CRM in place at all. And so when you look at scalability, whether it's just, me wanting to do as much volume as I can, or if I end up wanting to build an organization with inside the company, the scalability is there. And so if company's not willing to invest on that on the front end, it just tells me that they're taking a lot on the back end. And so with you guys, there's that good combination of, you're investing in ops, you're investing in the sales rep, you're investing in customer support.
Yep.
So that's really what stood out as far as other window companies in the space as well.
Yeah, we're also in it for the long run, to build it to be stable, scalable, and the technology was a huge missing component that over those first couple of years, there was a lot of data that I wanted to be able to see. There's a lot of tracking. There was just so many of these different things that I realistically, not coming from a technical background, I had no idea how we were going to do it. And just little by little, through coaching and through mentoring and kind of exploring other businesses and how they do it, we ended up with some of these amazing resources that, to me just seemed like a normal part of the process for growing a business. But it turns out like not everybody's focused on the same things. And, those guys are doing it their own way, whatever. I'm not sure which companies you were talking to, but everybody has their own unique little things that they're doing. But we want to, and I'm not really concerned about what they're doing. I'm focused on how good can we be as a company, as a culture, the resources that we can provide for our reps to be able to make this as easy of a process as possible, as a worry-free, stress-free, anxiety-free process. So you guys can go out there and do your job the best way that you can. And we've got the back end completely handled. And there's going to be very minimal responsibility because there still is. I mean, I still would go in there and say that I'm your guy. I'm your window guy. There's one thing that you'll never get at any other window company is a guy like me that's going to give you his personal cell phone number. You can call me, text me. It doesn't matter how long it's been since you got your windows done. I'm going to be your guy always. And that's one thing that'll separate us from any other companies. You won't get that from anywhere else. And we'll make sure no matter how big or how small the ask is that you're always taken care of and you have your questions answered. You need another tutorial on how to work your windows 3 years from now? I'll be there. And when you can say that with confidence and you're willing to back it up, that's something that easily separates you from everybody else. Yeah.
I mean, even just look at the tenure of most of your reps. It's pretty rare to have that many reps with the tenure that you have there. And so, they wouldn't be there if they didn't believe in the product or the company, and the company is doing a disservice on any spectrum.
We've got some great people here, man. On the operations side and on the sales side, the leadership that we've started to develop here because of the growth path that we've been on and the opportunity and the continued progress that we've made in our comp plans and the incentives. It's, one thing about being a part of a growing company is there is no stagnation. There is no consistency with really anything. Like we're still offering a consistent level of service and we continue to get better. But we were just talking about this today. Like there's things that we thought we were dialed in on. And there's this process, this SOP, this sequence of responsibilities that we'd put on people's plates. And within a couple of weeks, it's like we turn it on its head. It's like we're growing so fast. It's such a rate. And we're trying to get better in every one of these areas that it's just got to be something you come to terms with is nothing is going to be the same. Next month, next year, 5 years from now, we're going to be a completely different company.
Oh, that's the fun of startups. That's why I keep being in the startup space though. You worked in corporate America. It's too boring and dull and you're just doing the same thing. Those SOPs, like they're going to stay similar. Yeah. I would imagine on the back end, you're having to rewrite those every 6 months,
Yeah. It's a lot of work, but it's just part of the process, man. And there's some things that we're doing today that 2 years ago, I would have never had the audacity to think that we were capable of doing, or the creativity, or, there's just things that happen through time and evolutions and learning lessons and being exposed to a higher level of doing things that right now, 2 years from now, we're going to have the same type of conversation. There's stuff that we're going to be doing 2 years from now that there's no way that we would even be able to process it right now. We understand that you came from customer service and then you went to doing essentially a call center, right?
Yep.
And that led you little by little to build more confidence, to trust yourself, to take these bigger risks on yourself. And you got into solar of all things, and now Windows. So what's the next step for Brady Corliss in his sales and leadership journey?
Yeah, I think I toggle on this fence quite often of like, hey, do I end up going and doing my own thing, whatever that's going to be, or do I go build with inside of a company, right? I think that's the cool thing about these positions essentially is, I'm able to build a business with inside your business, and they can be extremely lucrative and a really rewarding like career path. And so, or do I take the full risk, like what you've done, and really bet on yourself and build something from the ground up?
Absolutely.
So, that I would say for me, I'm leaning more towards the entrepreneurship and being able to like really help a company scale and grow. But you just never know. And so
you never know, because listen, we have a guy, actually last week, he's been on the fence, similar to you, just kind of playing around with the ideas. Him and his wife had started this side business. Yep. And for the last 3 years, they've been building this side business while he's been actively selling at a high level for JKR Windows. And the entire time he was keeping me in on it. And I know both him and his wife. We're really good friends. They actually started that business as a result of me starting my podcast. And they said, awesome. You know what? We have some of that equipment. We actually do this Twitch thing where we record doing these video games and things. And so we have essentially everything that you're going to need to start a podcast if you'd like our help. And it turned into them starting a podcast business, which is an incredible story over the past 3 years, the amount of work that they've done, the evolution of them as a couple and as a business. And last week, it finally got to a point where he couldn't justify staying at JKR Windows anymore because of the need that he had within his wife's business. And so we had that conversation, and he knew the whole time that I was going to support him. But, just like anything, it's a little bit scary, as there's a lot of risk involved. And one of the last things I said to him is I got real serious, and he was talking about having a plan B and if he can come back and if we'll have a place for him. I said, of course we'll have a place for you, dude. I freaking love you like a brother, but you don't need that hanging over your head. You can't have a plan B. You've got to go all in for your own sake and for your wife's sake and for the future success of your business. You can't have a plan B. You got my full support in this, but you leave here after this conversation and you go all in on that business. Otherwise, you're going to leave some energy and leave some things on the table that are going to reduce your chances of being successful. So if you do decide to go do your own thing, you'll have my full support. But I commend you for having the vision for what's possible inside of JKR Windows with this trajectory that we're on and the opportunity to grow a business inside of a growing business that can provide you an income upwards of 7 figures, just as good as anything out there.
Yeah, that speaks to just like the abundance mentality on the leadership side of things, right? Because, a lot of people could look at that as, a top director or whatnot leaving. That's hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue each month that they're potentially adding to the bottom line. And so I think that really speaks to like just your abundance mentality, having that outlook on everything as well. And so, no, as of right now, I'm full bore on JKR. So
right on, man. Well, we've got a lot of momentum right now. We're going on 3 back-to-back record months because we're looking at, May being another record month this month. And you guys have got some serious momentum here in your office in Draper. And with the evolution of your directorship and going into a senior directorship, and then the talks about growing a team with inside the team, and then all of these little changes that even your suggestions are helping us make with the additions to our comp plan for recruiting. A year from now, the recruiting department is going to be looking a lot different. The comp plan is going to be looking a lot different for different levels of recruiting that you've done over the past year. And it's something that I'm excited about. And it does, just like this thing where I let that guy go and I encouraged him to go start this business with his wife and go full bore with it. There's some things that have been going over my head about how the structures need to go and the comp plans and the incentives for recruiting and where it comes from. But now as we've gotten clearer on that and the finances come together and we understand like how we make sense of it, all these things start to become possible. And building an organization within an organization is the direction that JKR Windows is going. So for us to be able to hit our 31 million goal this year and to be able to get to a $200 million company, that's what it's going to take, is having these little organizations and these little small unit leadership teams built within JKR Windows because of the incentives on top of the culture and the environment and everything that we offer to have a great place to show up.
Oh yeah, for sure. And the cool thing about the comp structure as it stands today, like obviously I've had some suggestions on potentially how to improve it, but how it stands today is, typically in the door-to-door space in particular, you have like your comp stack, if you will, and management usually has at least 50% of that. And so normally when you make a sell, management's getting 50%, you're getting whatever else is divvied out on that. Mm-hmm. And so the nice thing about Windows and why people are making so much money in Windows is the rep is actually taking home the lion's share of it, as opposed to, in say pest or solar. I know because I built out a lot of the comp structures throughout the region that I worked on. And so, you're taking a lion's share of the full pay stack home. And so the nice thing in Windows is people get paid up front. You're getting the lion's share of the pay. And now it's just fine tuning the back end, how it will work to end up actually building and scaling an organization with a proper comp structure.
Yep.
So, and that's all in addition to the actual sell, because it's all through, for the most part, going to be through PAR, which is beautiful.
Yeah, it's a cool thing that it's evolved into. And there's been a lot of outside influence, because if we were waiting on me to make decisions on how this was going to evolve, it would still be sitting very similar to what it was 5 years ago. So I appreciate your input and the expertise and the knowledge that you bring from all your years in different industries. That's going to help us in certain ways evolve this into what it becomes, to make it continually more and more beneficial for that type of concept to grow an organization within an organization.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I really enjoyed my time here at JKR. It's crazy to think how how much money's in Windows as well. And you pay up front, which is so crazy to me because I'm used to waiting, at least 4 weeks for any type of paycheck.
Well, let's talk on that for a second, because there's a reason why those kind of companies have to do back ends and they're not comfortable enough to pay it up front. And I never knew other companies did that, because I came from the window industry, and I dabbled a little bit in some of these other industries. I sold Vitamix blenders at the Costco's, and I did a year part-time with Primerica doing financial services. And they had, both of those were all upfront pay. But then the reason why they did is because there wasn't that back end potential of losing out and having back charges, a significant amount of back charges if they did pay up front, because of some of those reasons that we talked about with that dealer model and the installer being separated from the process. And it just creates all kinds of problems. So what we've built here at JKR Windows is a process where it's all in-house. We control it all, and we have very few cancellations. We have such a high success ratio with our customers making it all the way through the process that never has it been even an idea to have to pay on the back end.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear your input on that and why it's built that way in other industries.
I think Windows has a couple of really unique factors, and hopefully this answers your question. I think you mentioned this earlier in one of the team meetings, which is funny because it's the first time I've heard this mentioned. When you're doing a window presentation, you're literally getting like oohs and ahs throughout the presentation. You're getting like these jaws dropped and being like people verbally expressing how cool some of these features are, whether it be like an easy clean or a fresh air lock or whatever they're loving about the window. You don't get that in solar. You don't show a solar panel and have someone be like, oh my gosh, that is just beautiful. I can see myself using that every day, And so I think that's really unique about the industry. Or it's not like a pest control service. there's quite a bit of like that sexiness to it as well. And then you're also selling a product that people need. And so it's not necessarily just like a nice to have, it's a need to have, especially in certain homes. And so I think that also helps mitigate the cancellations. As far as the upfront pay, the financing works quite a bit different in Windows than a traditional financer. And so you guys do stage funding, which allows you to, effectively be able to pay up front, where in solar, the funding's set up a little bit different. Those other industries, they hold that pay purposely because they can have those cancellations, and the churn rate on the customer base for, like, say, a pest account, they're not going to pay the full thing up front because there's a strong chance that customer is going to churn. And so people wait on these massive back-end checks. I was talking to a rep yesterday. He had knocked on the house that I presented at. I ended up finding him later in the neighborhood. And so they hold these back-ends as like this golden carrot that you're going to receive this massive back-end check. And then almost every single year, what happens is like this back-end check just dwindles down. And it's, oh man, your customers ended up canceling. We had to pay this and this out. Mm-hmm. And so same thing with solar, honestly, even on like the override structure. The overrides are typically overpromised and under delivered every single time, even though they're being conservative in the estimates. And so with Windows, you literally know what you're going to get right up front. I mean, you do have a little bit of the unknown on the PAR on the back end on how that's going to work. But like I mentioned earlier, you're getting the lion's share up front. And so if PAR doesn't go through for whatever reason, you've already got the lion's share, as opposed to the lion's share most of the time on the back end for most of these companies and how they have it set up.
Interesting.
And so, no, it's just this cool combination of all those three things. Like I mentioned, you have a sweet product, you have a need, and then financing wise, you're able to bring it down to what people are paying on comparable to what they're paying on like a cell phone plan each month. Or if it's a big system, big project, it's going to be a family plan.
You know what's interesting about that financing is that in the solar industry, it's well known that the cancellation rates are very high. So I assume that has a lot to do with that underwriting process and whether or not they would allow just industry-wide any type of staged funding like we have in Windows. But even as a window company, you still have to qualify that by proving to them that you have an infrastructure and a system that is qualified to be able to receive this staged funding. So for the first year of JKR Windows, I basically, took my concept and told them what I was going to do, and that I'm coming back a year from now. They told me 2 years, and I said, I'm coming back a year from now, and I'm going to prove to you that I'm going to have very little cancellations, and you guys are not going to put anything on the line by letting me have staged funding. And I went there and I gave them all my financials and all my success rates and all the cancellations, what little there were. And after a year of a 2-year qualification period, they let me start having staged funding because of the reputation that I'd built.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like any lender, right? They're going to be protective of their money. It's their asset. They're the ones that have a good amount on the line. And so even if you're qualifying for a house and you have low credit, you're going to have probably additional proofs of income. You're going to have a lot more than someone with higher credit. It just goes off of that accountability. And so you essentially just showed them that you have high credit, you have a proven model, and so they feel comfortable lending whatever they need to lend you to be able to execute.
Yep, it's pretty cool. And it's, the financing it's such a great tool for us because there is also this very unique value proposition with Windows where we're saving them money. And even though these windows are costing them a significant amount, versus getting a pest control deal, they're immediately, as soon as the windows are installed, it's saving them money. It's saving them years and years of life on their AC and their furnace because it's now maintaining the home much better, and it's not having to run those units nonstop to be able to keep up. And it's also adding equity to the home. So they may have had to come up with a payment, but now it's being offset by all these other areas where we built value. It's just a unique thing that there's not very many products that you can sell that offer that much value.
And you think of it as well, like if I'm sitting down showing you a solar proposal it's likely only going to make sense if I can offset most of your power or even excess of your power. I can't just offset 8% of your power. Where with Windows, you can make that pivot from going from a full project, if that's not going to fit within their financial needs, to customizing that to a certain amount of windows. And then they can always do different stages. And so the first time I sat in on a presentation was with our top guy, McKay. And I was just blown away that he went from showing different financing options to showing a partial on the home and having it end up making like tremendous amount of sense. He went from a hard no to, yes, that's perfect. That's right within our budget. That's exactly what I was looking for. And he got it done. And so when I first saw that, I was like, there's no way, like, I'm going to kill it at this game. And it served the family exactly how they wanted to be served. Right.
Yep.
And so, and it still made sense for everyone, every party involved.
Yep. That's something that you can feel good about. Well, I appreciate you jumping on with us today, man. It was great getting to know you a little bit more and what your goals are. Yeah. I'm excited to be a part of your success story here with JKR Windows and look forward to getting to know you even more, Brady. So until next time, keep checking in for more every week from the Just Real Quick podcast. Like and subscribe, do all the things you know how to do to support JKR Windows and the Just Real Quick podcast. Until next time, we're out of here.